Let's start the application again and let's test few more scenarios. Application has started on port 8081 and let's go to the postman and I'm going to click the send button for the customer with ID 1 and we got the response because in our table we have a customer with customer ID 1. So in case if we hit a send button for a customer who does not exist in our table, we get a response like this with 500 internal server error as the status code. But actually, we don't need this kind of error. We need a error which indicates 404 not found. But currently, our REST endpoint give a error like this. However, our application is correctly returning a resource not found exception, but REST client is still returning 500 internal server error. We need to fix this issue. So let's go to the resource not found exception. And I'm going to annotate the exception with @response status annotation, and the value I will give as HTTP status not found. And I'm going to create 3 fields in this resource not found exception. First field is resource name of type string. The second field is field name of type string. The third field should be field value of type long. Let's comment out the current constructor, and I'm going to create a new constructor. This constructor takes 3 parameters: resource name, field name, and field value. And then we can use those parameters to construct a message. And then we can pass that message to the superclass constructor. Let's use string.format. I'm using the placeholders. Resource name not found with field name colon field value. Also inside the constructor, we have to set the instance variables. Now we need to update our service layer because currently resource not found exception does not have this parameterized constructor used in our resource layer. So we have to update our resource layer to reflect the new parameterized constructor. Let's go to the customer service IMPL class. And I'm going to comment this line. And in the constructor, we can simply pass resource name. We can pass the resource name as customer and then field name as customer ID. Field value as customer ID. Let's update the other two methods also. Let's run the application again and we'll see how the response is showing now. Application has started on port 8081. Let me go back to Postman client. Let's use the same request again and let's click the send button. And this time we are getting the status code as 404 and the error as not found. And we see the same code and error in top right corner as well. However, we still want to customize this error message. So to do that, let's go to the project again and let me stop the project. And we need to create a error details class in the exception package. I'm going to give the fields for the error details. First one is timestamp, which is of data type local date time. Next, message of type string. Next field is path of type string. And the last field is error code of type string. So these are the fields for the error details class. And I'm going to annotate it with all the Lombok annotations. As the next step, I'm going to create another class in the exception package. This class is global exception handler. Let me annotate this class with @controller advice annotation. Next, I'm creating a method which returns a response entity object. And this response entity object encloses an object of error details. And the method name is handle resource not found exception. This takes a parameter of resource not found exception object, and also as the second parameter it takes an object of web request. I'm creating a new object of error details class. Using the constructor of error details class, we can provide the values for the instance variables. So the first value is the timestamp. So we can use the local date time now. Then the get message method of the exception. From that we can get the message from the exception class, from the exception object. And the third value provides the path for the resource, and the last value is the error code. For that, we can give a meaningful error code like resource underscore not found. Now we have created the object of the error details class, and I'm annotating this method with @exception_handler annotation, and also I'm giving the class name as resource not found exception dot class. So if this global exception handler get any resource not found exception, it will able to handle this exception inside this handle resource not found exception method. Then the last step is it is returning a response entity object by enclosing the error details object and HTTP status of not found. So whenever our application returns a resource not found exception, the global exception handler class will be able to handle that exception in this handle resource not found exception method. Also, we can create one more method inside this class to handle any generic exception. Currently, handle resource not found exception is handling the resource not found exception, and if there is any generic exception occurs in our application, we need to have a method to handle that exception. For that, I'm creating another method that also returns a response entity enclosing a error details object. And the method name for that method is handle global exception, which takes a parameter of an exception object as the first parameter, and the second parameter is an object of web request. Inside this method, we need to create another object of error details class. Similar to the previous method, here also we are passing values to the constructor of the error details class. First value is the current timestamp. We can use the local date time.now to get the current timestamp, and also the exception dot get message to get the exception message, and web request dot get description method to get the path for the URL where exception occurred, and error code is internal underscore server underscore error. Finally, we can return a new response entity object enclosing this error details object. Also, the status code in this case should be internal server error. We need to annotate this method also using @exception handler annotation, but the class of the exception should be exception.class. In case our application generates any exception of type exception, then this handle global exception method will be able to handle the exception. Let's run the application now again. Application has started again on port 8081. Let's go to the same request and let's send the request again. And we can see now we have still got the 404 not found exception, but the error response body has changed now. We see the message now in our response body, and also we see the path which shows the URI, and the last one is error code which shows resource underscore not underscore found. So this response body denotes the error details structure.